What's going on, guys? And welcome to the Vermintide 2 weapons tier list for our girl Shade. Currently the big balance beta is going on, and I will be going off of the changes made in that because it's looking like a lot of those are going to make it into the final version of the game. So without any further ado, in D tier, first up, I've got the Elven Axe. Now it's not like this one's a bad weapon, honestly. It's got armor piercing, it's got shield breaking capabilities, it's got pretty good single target damage. I just personally don't think it fits on the character of Shade because she's a total beefy, sneaky, backstabbing monster slayer. And this weapon does absolutely craptastic monster damage. Does almost nothing to monsters. And on top of that, the light attacks are a bit awkward. They're a little slow, they're a little kind of weird, takes some getting used to. This is also a DLC weapon, by the way, so something to consider there. This weapon, my personal opinion, is Shade's least useful weapon. So I have this down by itself in D tier. Up in C tier, I've got the Elven Spear. Now this one's fast, it's got decent reach. For hordes, it's good crowd control. There's nothing wrong with this weapon for normal, average, everyday purposes. Only things are, this one relies heavily on getting headshots. On most classes, on Shade, you can kind of just use your ult if you really need to take out an elite. So there's that. But the biggest thing is, again, the monster damage. Sufficiently lacking on the Elven Spear. So even though it's a little bit better than the Elven Axe, I think, for crowds and hordes and stuff like that, the monster damage is about the same. It's about almost nothing, right? So C tier. And the same kind of thing here with her Greatsword. Now this one in the beta has gotten improved cleave, improved crit chance, so it's actually not a dog turd sandwich anymore. This weapon is, pretty much like really good for elites now, or hordes now, because like a push attack and a couple light attacks, it's faster, it's critting more, so you're gonna proc swift slaying more, take out those hordes, linesmen, all that good stuff. This is a really good weapon for hordes, not for monsters. Same kind of thing like the spear, just doesn't do that much. Any weapon that's either like a two-handed weapon for Shade or a one-handed weapon only has like one blade, one piece of metal attached to a handle. It's generally not going to do that much monster damage on Shade. Dual weapons for her always do more monster damage because there's two of them. With that being said, we bump up to B tier, and this is where things kind of start to get good. First off, I have the Glaive. Now this one has been unnerfed since Winds of Magic for the beta. It's got improved cleave, it's got its linesman back. Its second charge attack is absolutely massive if you nail the headshot. You can one-shot most things. It's really great. If you're going to use a weapon that's like not really like a Shade weapon, this is probably the best one to use overall. Because you can deal with elites, you can deal with hordes, and you still do some decent monster damage. You don't like blow things away, but if you time it right, if you time it past that first charge attack, right before that second one comes down, you ult right before you hit that one, you're going to be alright. You're going to do some decent damage. It just takes some timing. It might be a little weird if you have never tried that before, but if you're going to do that kind of thing, this is probably the one to use. With that being said, we move on to her 4 best weapons, in my humble opinion. Number 1, a weapon that is heavily slept on in Shade, for Shade, the One-Handed Sword. That's right, I said it. Now this is a bit of a higher skill weapon, because the motions are a little bit different. They're not your average motions. You got like a heavy down strike, and then you have like kind of an uppercut, and there's like a stab out. So there's a lot going on here. So it takes some getting used to, but when you use this one, it's great. It's fast, does good damage, it's gotten some bonus crit chance added to it recently. It's awesome for single targets. And believe it or not, it's really good for monsters as well. I think this is like her This is probably the second best weapon in terms of just pure monster damage, right behind the dual daggers, because this thing just does a lot. And I don't know why. It's a single weapon, but it just is. It's just really good. Give it a try. I urge you heavily. Also in A tier, we have the dual swords. Now, these are kind of fan favorites for Shade. These are really good, especially for hordes. You can absolutely just take out like 10 enemies at once in one swing, one charge attack with these. They're really good. If you have Exquisite Huntress, you can get that stacking headshot damage. It's really good on higher difficulties like Legend and Cataclysm. You can absolutely be annihilating everything. And you can hit many enemies at once. The only problem with this weapon is that it lacks a little bit for elites, armor, things like that. You're going to kind of have to rely on your ranged weapon or your team to deal with those. And the monster damage is, of course, it's not like it's pitiful monster damage. It's okay monster damage, but it's lower than, say, the sword and dagger. It's lower, definitely lower than the dual daggers. And yes, it is lower than the one-handed sword. But dual swords, still a really great weapon. I have it firmly in the A tier here. Bumping up to S tier, we have two non-DLC weapons for you. First one, my personal favorite in the entire game, the sword and dagger. This is just a weapon that has no weaknesses. This is great for everything. People were kind of freaking out about it because it had been nerfed for just a slight amount of time, like a couple weeks. They had removed some of the crit chance from it, but then they added it back, so y'all can rest easy, I promise. But this weapon is great for hordes, it's great for elites, and it's even pretty damn good for monsters too. It can do it all. It's got, the average amount of stamina, it can still do bleed damage, it's just fucking tasty, dude. This is a great weapon. And I love it. Also up in S tier, dual daggers. Now this is a purely Shade weapon because it's just absolutely meant for monster killing. This weapon does the most monster damage out of any of Corellion's weapons. Hands down. Like easily. Just the most. And because it's so good for that, it has really low reach because those daggers are short. It's got lower stamina, 2 to be exact. And it has recently received a crit chance nerf on the first 2 light attacks, making this one a bit harder to use. However, though, the finesse multiplier for it has been increased. And if you're asking me, what does that mean? What is a finesse multiplier? It basically means the amount of damage you would do if you get a headshot on an enemy has been increased. So if you have the skill for it, if you take the time to practice, if you get those headshots, you're going to be doing more damage to elites, to hordes, to every kind of enemy. It is technically a single target weapon, and it requires a little bit of practice to use, but I still think it's really great. I have it in S tier. So that's my list, guys. In S tier, I have sword and dagger and the dual daggers. A tier, I have the dual swords and the one-handed sword. B tier, I have the glaive. C tier, I have the elven spear and the great sword. And down in D tier, the DLC elven axe. That is our girl Shade. If you guys like this video, cool. Leave a like. Don't. Leave a comment. Whatever. I don't care. If you want to join my Discord, I have about 140 people in there. And they're good people, usually. Link will be in the description for that. Consider joining. And with that, I bid you all adieu. Take care.